love to turn the computer over to our own parliamentarian, DTM, past district governor, woman extraordinaire, and a lot of fun to be around, Joanne Morrison. Yay!
Yay. And I'm really happy to be here tonight. Do we have the agenda somewhere?
Yes, I will advance the slide.
Yay! There we go. Oh, look. This is for, the meeting was called to order to discuss the meat. And it has what? Robert. Anybody have? Now, am I going to be able to hear people, or do I have to just rattle on?
You have to just rattle on. Somebody good time. I'll try and read what it says.
Discuss the meat. It has something. It
has been pointed out that there is no meat. We're here. A
motion to fight over the bones.
Yes, a motion has been made to fight over the bones. Yes,
I love that actually, but that's not who Henry Robert was. So no. Henry Robert was a preacher's kid, a PK, and so he was used to going to meetings where people were generally nice and wanted to get along, but really didn't have a concept of how to do that, and so. He and going to other community meetings, and you got to think like the end of the 19th century, people were starting to get out of their homes, and business people were attending meetings, and that kind of thing wasn't just for the wealthy anymore. But people didn't have a way of conducting meetings, and so he found that a lot of people wanted to get along, but didn't know how. So he gradually came up with some ideas, and there was some rules of orders that had been written, and he used some of those things. But as he went to more and more meetings, he found out and decided more ways of doing things. Now, why also as a character was he so interested? So maybe you know, maybe you don't, but he was a general. There he is. And although he was a general, he wasn't what you would call a gun-toting general. And if you look at him, in a way, he doesn't look like that. He looks like my ex-husband, actually. He was rather kind and nice gentleman. But he was the kind of general who built roads. And he did that here in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State, where they needed a lot of bridges and roads built. So he was a practical man. And what he did, as soon as he went to Washington State to assist in building roads, he said to all of the men in the army there that were going to be building the roads, I need to hear from you. If you have an idea, don't wait for me to come up with it. I want you to tell me what you're thinking. Maybe we'll use it, maybe we won't, but more things from more people makes better decisions. And that's something that we hear of today in workplaces that are inclusive. And then he was so good at doing his job in Washington State, and they wanted to have a major port in the southeastern states. And they were debating over what city, and all of the cities there wanted to have the port. But he insisted on Galveston. And he insisted on Galveston is because a really amazing engineer, he knew that that port would be able to keep itself clean because of the way the rivers were, if he directed the water right through that port. And in fact, that port still stands. The wall has a couple dings in it, but more than 100 years later, and that's why Galveston is such a successful port, because of Henry Roberts' insistence that would be the best city and the best place to build a port. And he was right. Some argued that he would be wrong, but they went with his anyway, and they were very happy with that. So he was a practical man. He was a reasonable man. He was probably a pretty nice guy, because him and his wife got along really well. They worked very well together. And even after Henry Robert died, she continued to do the work on Robert's Rules. And many of the past family members were Robert's Rules people, and still there's family members involved in creating and recreating Robert's Rules, which is it's not static. It keeps getting more updated. So now there's things in Robert's rules about how to have online meetings that are fair. So he was a pretty cool guy and not a rules guy. So this evening, my husband and I are talking about this, and he said, I always thought it was interesting that you were interested in Robert's rules, but I didn't quite understand it because you're not a rules person. That was him talking about me, and he should know. And that's true. I'm not a rules person, but what I am is a person who likes practical aspects of things that work. If you have a method, if you set up your workplace so that it's comfortable to work in, if you, and I have employees, I have a business, and if we have ways of doing things that everybody understands and they can contribute to build those ways of doing things, then it makes a better, more cohesive workplace. We're not working against each other. It's not us and them in any way. It's we're a team. How can we make this work? How can I say things in a way that other people can understand it? And I think that's basically what Robert's Rules does. So you'll find there are different rules of order. So the government uses different rules of orders than Robert's Rules. They use a fellow's stuff called Bornos. So when they talk in Bornos about tabling motions, then we get all confused and think it's the same thing in Roberts, but it's not. Tabling for the government means we're going to put this on the table to discuss it. In Roberts, it means we're going to set this aside on the table because something else is happening, and we're going to pick that back up off the table in this same meeting. It's not going to sit there for a long time. So the speaker comes, or he says, I'm sorry, I have to leave early. Can I speak first? And you say, okay, we'll set aside the rules, and we'll put this, what we're doing, on the table for now, and then we're going to pick it right back up again. So just little things like that are different. But Robert's Rules, so did everybody print the agenda and the things that were the handouts? There's the chart of motions.
Maybe just put the little, maybe click the thumbs up or the thumbs down if you didn't. No, we've got somebody crying. We've got a thumbs up.
Carol could send them out in your email, and you can look at them after. I'll go through some of them, and they may not make sense to read it again, but that's okay. This is a big topic. And even from Toastmasters that has a short version that you can buy from them. It's a 2.5 hour presentation in the leadership things,
which we're not going to do here.
Yeah, you can go to the next. Can I do this? Oh, look. So there are different types of motions, and these are just some of them. So there's the main motion, and this is what people think of as motion. So you want to get something done in your Toastmaster club or in some organization, and somebody makes a motion. So I move that we, have a band in our organization, and then the discussion goes on about whether it's going to be a jazz band, or it's going to be a street marching band, or whatever it's going to be, and you can amend these motions and add things in. Ideally, we'll go through a main motion a little bit further. The privilege motions are things that, say the room's too hot, say the room's too cold, say we haven't had a break and we all need to go to the bathroom, or there's some stupid people who got to smoke, and you didn't hear me say that. You raise a question of some kind of privilege, and it doesn't relate to the main motion. And on the handout chart of motions, this is divided up into parts, and you can see it pretty clearly. Subsidiary motions, though, belong to the main motion. So if you make a motion, and again, you want to lay it on the table, or if you want to close the debate, or if you want to limit the debating time, or if you have a time and you want to extend the time, or if you want to postpone it to a certain time. So if you want to postpone a motion to a certain time, then you say, I move that we postpone this motion until we have more information till the next meeting, or something like that. Another really good motion, and something that maybe doesn't get used often enough, is often when you make a motion, you find the discussion goes back and forth and you're not getting anywhere, and at some point you think, oh, we don't have enough information. We can't discuss it this time. So that's where you would use a motion to refer to a committee, and you strike a committee. Generally, the person who makes the motion to strike a committee gets to be the lead of that committee and gets named that, and then ideally the chairman would then name other members or ask other people to come forward to be on that committee. And then they have to decide when they're going to meet and when you're going to come back with that information. So you can have your main motion sitting there for 3 months, but after that it just dies. It goes out into the nether regions and you don't know where it went, or you can make it again possibly. And then postpone indefinitely is quite fun. And you can do this in your club. If you make a main motion, say to buy a bus or a popcorn machine or something for your club, and then at the end you really don't want to do that, you can say, I move to postpone this motion indefinitely. And then again, if you realize that the motion just wasn't a fit for the organization or for somebody in particular, you postpone it indefinitely, and it goes out into the nether regions, and it's gone forever, and you never have to think about it again. And nobody has to know that this horrible motion was made, because you only have to record stuff that was done. So no one even has to look stupid for making the stupid motion. It's quite convenient. After that, there's incidental motions, and incidental motions are things like a point of order. So they're about procedure. So they kind of belong or affect the main motion, but they're not part of the main motion. And, oh yes, I didn't mention amendments. Of course there's amendments back up in subsidiary motions. You can have 2 amendments at any one time. And so you can have amendments and then an amendment to the amendment. And that means the amendment to the amendment belongs to the amendment. I hope that makes sense. You want to put your thumbs up if that makes sense? Or if you're confused, thumbs down. Okay. So say you make an amendment to the motion to buy a bus, that it should be a red bus. And then somebody else says, well, I want to amend that amendment to say a blue bus rather than a red bus. Well, then those do belong together. But if somebody says, I want to amend to buy a bus saying 412 people, that doesn't belong to the amendment. So that amendment will have to wait until the amendment to the amendment is taken care of, because you can only do so many things at once. So, sensible. It's sensible not to do too many things at once. Okay, all the way back down to incidental again. So if the chair says something or disagrees with something and you don't agree, you can appeal the decision of the chair. You don't have to listen to that person. They're just one person in the room. They have 1 vote, you have 1 vote. Questions or points of interest, you can ask the chair. Everything goes through the chair. Madam Chair, please tell me how I could do this, or please tell me why we're doing that. And then the chair can answer the question. You can suspend the rules. So you can say, I want to suspend the rules and say that we take no time this evening on this, even though it's on our agenda, and bring it back next time, because I think we have other more important business to deal with. And so in that case, you could also have said postpone to another time or refer to a committee. So there's lots of ways of doing things, and they're not wrong. It's just, how can we get this done so that everybody understands? And then say you have a question with a lot of parts to it. You can divide up the parts. You can say, okay, let's buy a bus that's red, and it's going to cost us no more than $30,000, and it's going to be this and this. And then you could say, somebody could say, I move that we divide this question into money and what, and I think we should deal with money first, right? And then we'll see if we've really got a budget to do this. Generally, whoever makes a motion gets to speak to it first. You can divide things even smaller, so if it's a long motion with many paragraphs, you can do things by paragraph even. And then you can have, anyway, there's lots of different parts to that. And then once you have a motion, you can always get rid of it. You can rescind it or amend the previous motion. And there are rules around that. And you can reconsider a motion in the same meeting also. And once you get your chart of motions, you're going to look and you're going to see in every kind of motion, can you interrupt the speaker? Does it require a second? Is it amendable? Is it debatable? And does it require a vote? And how much vote? So one other thing I love about Roberts is a majority vote is most things, which is more than half. Not so many plus one, because if there's 17 people in the room, how many would have to vote if it was one more than half? You'd have a half a person, and they're probably not present. They died. Anyway.
They were divided.
Yeah. But some things require a 2/3 majority, and if you look later on about which things require a 2/3 majority, like object to the consideration of a motion, well, one person shouldn't be able to sideline that, and a small amount of people shouldn't be able to sideline that kind of vote. So that requires a 2/3 vote. So it really makes sense. The majority, there should be the majority of people who are for something, or a majority who are against. So there's ways of doing a lot of things. So how's that going so far? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
Any questions?
Listening? I've lost you.
Oh, I see thumbs up. There we go.
2 people thumbs up. That's something. That's better than none. That's not quite a majority.
And I see Sujetta says great info. That's perfect.
Good. Thank you. And let's go along now to the next page. We're doing pretty good. And then, is there a place people can type in questions later too?
Yes, at the top of the screen, there should be a Q&A button. I don't know what your screen looks like, but mine's up at the top of the screen.
Okay. And what does that look like, Carol? The Q&A
well, for mine, I get the view audience questions, so I'm assuming that it's in the same spot. It's up.
What does it look like?
Up at the top of the screen, it's got a little, like a little quote, a little voice bubble.
Oh, yeah. Okay, with 3 lines in it. That one.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know how. Anyway, so we'll see how that works in a while. So then, the thing about making a motion. Here's what happens. People make. Okay, yeah. You stand and you wait to be recognized, or you put your hand up and you're recognized if it's small group. I move that. I move that. We think about buying a bus. Or I move that. We buy a bus for January, costing no more than $30,000. That's red, and we'll put our logo on the side. Now we know the whole discussion and the whole motion. All of the information is there. And we know what we're talking about. And we know we can divide that up if anything becomes controversial. So if you're making a motion and you can fill in more blanks than just one, it's really helpful to move the discussion along. And one way to do that is to write it down. If you write down a motion, you're not going to ramble, you're going to figure it out. I got hell at the Parliamentarians Association for being too helpful we practice motions, and so we take turns running the meeting, which is just one vote basically, or one motion. And the person was making a motion that wasn't very clear, and so I said, do you mean this? And I got hell for that later. I just think it's practical in a group where people may not know how to make motion. And if somebody doesn't like that I'm doing that, then they can speak up and say, I think you're too interfering in this. But if the person making a motion says, yeah, that's what I wanted to say, then to me, that's a yes. So then you kind of know what your motion is. So somebody makes a motion, and who does it belong to? Does it belong to them? It does, until the chair says, so the motion is this. And then once it's seconded, the motion belongs to the group. Whoever made the motion doesn't have any say in the motion anymore. They can speak to it, but it's not their motion, it's the group's motion. Little known fact, you can go ahead and pretend you had a second, or if somebody pops up and starts speaking about it, and everybody's yeah, and accepts it, and it's a second person, that is a second.
Oh.
Because the idea of a second is that there's more than one person who wants to talk about this. So if it doesn't get seconded, and there's somebody who keeps making the same motion and people are sick of hearing from that person, nobody seconds it, and it just dies. It's not a motion. You don't record it. Nothing happens with it. They get to go home and cry on their own because they're horrible people, possibly. They might. Aww. Probably not going to happen at Toastmasters, right? No. But if they're obstreperous and obstructive, you might want them to go away. Yes. Message me.
Does the seconder have to be one who agrees with the motion?
Really great question. I love that. They don't have to be. You can just want to hear it discussed. And I don't know if you've ever been somewhere where you've got a motion you disagree with, and after you hear the discussion, you change your mind. So you can want to hear it discussed just to see what's this all about? Why are people excited about that? Or there's somebody who's excited about that. Let's see what they have to say. So in one club I belonged to, an advanced club, we were almost all area governors. We were all part of some district team or other. None of us could compete in contests. So we had a motion that stayed on the books for 2 or 3 years, and we just went along with it, not to participate in our area contest. And when we thought about it, it made sense, because there was only 1 or 2 people who belonged to other clubs and competed in other clubs. There wasn't really anybody in our club who was able to compete. So it made sense. And then we had a new VP ed, and she said, well, I'm going to move that we participate in the area contest. And I went, well, I don't think so. And they said, well, I just want to go, okay, go ahead, make the motion. And by the end, of course, I went out and looked around the room and went, oh, there's no area and division governors here, or there's just one. Yeah, we could have a contest, and it could be quite fun. So, you have to be ready to change your mind, too. And that's what this discussion is about. When you make a motion, everybody's involved. So I I live in a condo, so there's a strata council, and they record the abstentions. Makes me crazy. Don't do that. That's stupid. Of course, in Bornos, they might do that because people who are representing somebody directly, like you have constituents if you're in the government, and if you're doing something like a motion that involves money that would be spent, say, on your street, better if you're abstaining. And if you're recorded as abstaining, then people can see you didn't vote on that. And so something that was going to benefit you, you didn't have a say in. So it makes sense. But normally we vote and it's all those for and against, and you ask for both all the time. However, you want to move a meeting along really fast and there's things that you're pretty sure people are going to agree with, you say, with no objections, skip all of this part, we'll accept the minutes. Don't bother voting. It's going to get accepted anyway. And if somebody objects, they have to know they're allowed to object. That's the only thing. Then you have a vote or you have a discussion. So there is ways of really making some of the business go quicker. In Toastmaster meetings, if you keep things more formal and more simple, it's probably easier for people to learn some of the basics. And when I joined, the first club I joined was Surrey Toastmasters, and they had a business meeting every week, and it was so fun. It was Table Topics 2. And everybody could speak and could be heard, and so it was, I don't know, that was one of the reasons I liked Robert. The other reason is I was at a business meeting that was really horrible, and when I stood up to say something, I got laughed at because I didn't know what I was doing. I know, no fair. And now, because I understand Robert, I can see why business meetings, even when they're not using Roberts, why they bug me. Because if it had this kind of organization, and so if I am in a business meeting of another type and I think something wasn't fair about that, then I'll speak up anyway. And that's a big part of Robert, is you have a voice. Each person has one vote. We're all just as important as the other. And, you know, it can be difficult to speak up, but boy, what a life lesson when you learn to stand up. When you think a lot of people are against this, or a lot of people are for it, and I have a question and I'm not sure about this. And when I do speak up like that, and probably not as hard for me as somebody who's a real introvert, because I tend to be a blurter anyway, but when I do that, it's amazing how many people go, yeah, thank you for speaking up. So, you know, if you think something is wrong, this is all about having a voice, and don't hold back. It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to other people. Yeah.
We'll just take this question because it's sort of relevant to what you've been saying.
MPs don't follow Robert's rules. They have Bourne's, Bourners, and so it's a different set of rules. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That was
And
the
I
question.
don't know a lot about Bourne's. I do know that it's a bit different, and there's reasons for that too. But Roberts works really well with non-profit organizations and clubs and churches. And, you know, churches can be horrible places when everybody decides God's on their side. So then they have to work things out. And Roberts is a way of helping with that. We can go, what do I have next there?
I accidentally skipped ahead to that one. So we've already covered the types of motions, but how about Toastmasters?
Yeah, that's okay. And so that's just a few minutes here on the difference between club business meetings and executive meetings. Put your thumb up if you have both in your club. If you can find the thumbs up. You have both.
Margaret does.
And if you don't have both, go thumbs down. I want to see.
She wants to see if everybody's paying attention.
Well,
there we go. There we go.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of clubs think, well, we elected this executive. They're supposed to make the decisions and run stuff. But actually, whose money is it? Whose time is it? Whose day of the week is it? You know?
That's how it's written.
Yeah, so, can you hold that for a minute, Margaret?
Actually, can you type it in the attendee chat? Oh, here it is. She did type it in the attendee chat. It's BOURINOT''S rules of order.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Margaret. Yeah, so at the executive meeting, things are a bit less formal. At the executive meeting, the chairman makes motions, the chairman participates in debate, and the chairman would vote, typically. If something is really difficult to talk about, and most people are against, or half of them are for, and you can keep out of it, without feeling like, I feel strongly about something, you might want to, for the sake of helping people to get along. But often the president of the club knows a lot of things that other people in the club don't know. And in a small group, it's easier to have a discussion, and you don't need to be as formal. But if something is more difficult, then you might want to be more formal. And in a club business meeting, generally the person running the meeting doesn't vote because you want to be seen as unbiased. You want to be seen as not having any vested interest in it. And if you are going to vote and it's going to change the outcome, you better be really sure, because you don't want to cause a problem. You want to just sort of let that go. Or maybe you could ask for another motion for more discussion, or to send it to a committee. Sometimes things just have to be decided. So the chairman's role varies depending on the type of meeting it is, and the size of the meeting, and maybe how difficult the question is to deal with. So more formality when you need it, and less formality. And surely there's nothing wrong with having fun. Like if you can keep a business meeting, especially one that's a difficult question, if you can keep it light, why not do that? It's going to help people to get along, and there's no reason not to. You don't want to make light of a serious situation. So I think the chairman's really important to that. Their manner of knowing what they do and being in charge and taking charge and being the one to say, okay, we'll do this, and knowing that other people can disagree with them is really important to running it and getting things done. And at Toastmasters, well, here's the thing. If the executive members give a report at the club business meeting, by the time you come to an election, everybody in the club knows what those jobs were. And because the club I belong to first had those things, I wanted to be the VP Ed. I knew I could do that job. And I was crazed to do it as a 3-month Toastmaster. I didn't get elected when that came up in May because I joined in the spring. But when that person left, I did get elected because I wanted it so bad. And I just knew what to do. It was going to be fun for me, and I read everything, and I was so in it. But that's one reason at Toastmasters. Also, again, because it's all of the members' money, time, education, all of those things belong to everybody. So that's why at Toastmasters. Now, conference business meetings, a lot of it is already kind of set. So there's an agenda, and once you agree to the agenda, that's it. You can have an exception to the agenda, but now you're into a 2/3 vote. And Carol doesn't want that anyway, probably. Probably not. But the reason is, I guess, like there's a certain seriousness at that kind of level too, and some things in the district have reasons behind them which a lot of Toastmasters may not understand or know about, and so. If somebody wants to make a motion at the business meeting and the agenda is already set, the group has agreed on the agenda, and that's why you don't change it. So if you feel strongly that you want something added, you're going to have to get together enough people with a 2/3 majority to change that agenda from what it was set out to be. But if you want something added to the agenda, write it out, give it to the secretary, give it to Carol before the meeting, and just see what happens. You should be able to do it.
Yes, we do have standing rules. Standing rules say that we do need it in writing before the meeting.
Yeah, and in writing is just a great idea all the way through. And yeah. So what else do we have there? Was there any questions about that at all? There was one question, and I don't know if that came from there or not. But what was that from Margaret?
No, Margaret was the one that shared the rules of order.
Okay. And
Borino. Yeah. And then I think you've answered all the questions that we've had so far.
Okay,
so
good.
We'll carry on.
Yeah, so here we are, doing pretty good here. So here's the Robertson's Plain English.
Oh, I found that, so I just tucked it in behind that other image. Sorry.
Other ones make me suspicious because I've thought there's one that came from Toastmasters International that had little tabs in it so you could look things up. But some of the information was a little bit off base. It was sort of right, but sort of not. Robert's Rules of Order in brief is really 2 Robert's Rules. And so the information is all correct. It's very readable. You can read little parts of it and get the information. But if you read through it, and there's a lot of examples. So if you have any interest at all and you read that book, you have the basics. And then if you also have the Robert's Rules of Order 11th edition, like the newly revised 11th edition, then you could look up anything else and start to understand what those things were. But this in brief is kind of like going to a whole bunch of meetings and finding out how Robert's Rules works. So much more readable. So the other one is great for looking up specific things. Then there's the Toastmasters Communication and Leadership Excellence Parliamentary Procedure in Action, which you can do at your club. I've tried to do it like 15 minutes a time, week by week, but then there's people there and not there, but I suppose it helps just the same.
We did it in an hour and a half, and it was really rushed. We could have spent more time on it.
Yeah.
But we voted on what color we wanted to spray paint an ostrich's feathers.
Oh, see? Awesome. How fun is that?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. There were counter motions, and somebody tabled it.
There's a motion on the books at Speaker's Advantage for years that Joanne is not allowed to be the timer. And I just want to keep that because I'm so bad at that job. But I think somebody wanted to rescind that motion at some point, and I don't know. I didn't want to go along with it, so I think I've ignored it since then. Yeah, and so there is these notes here, and the if I hold this up, wherever it is, this one.
I can stop the slides and make you take up the whole screen. Won't that be better?
This one you see is kind of difficult to read on here. This is the one that we were talking about that has all of the privilege and subsidiary. These are just some of the motions. There are a lot more motions, but these are the basic ones. And the top 13 from the main motion up are in order of precedence. So which ones have precedence over the other ones? So that's kind of good to know too. So if somebody wants to do something, and when you look at what those motions are, then you'll see that it makes sense why one takes precedence over the other. It's very logical, it's very well thought out. Anyway, so you'll have that. I took this and I changed it a little bit, and I put a couple of notes at the bottom of it. This is the one, the chart of motions is out of the Toastmasters International thing. I like my version better, but I'm a little bit biased.
There were a couple of other handouts. I actually sent all of them that you had sent to me.
Yeah. There's a handout on making a motion and the meeting order of business. And then there's a secretary's minutes for club meetings that I've worked on a bit. It could still use some more work, but it just gives you one idea of how to take minutes. And the resources are there as well. And that's about it. So anybody have any questions about something that's come up at their club, or do you want to make a motion and we could play with this a little bit?
While we're waiting for somebody to type something, just your take. What should the secretary be including and what should the secretary not be including in the minutes?
Basically you record what happened. You don't need to record the seconds. You record the motion that passed. The business that was sometimes when I was the president of one club and we did have monthly meetings, we would always have a discussion question at the end. So something, how can we improve this in our club? So we could have a few notes about what we talked about at the end, but it's a much more difficult thing to record that kind of, discussion, and that's why motions are easier for the secretary, because they record what actually got done, not what got discussed.
Right.
And, sometimes it's not wrong to put some of it in there. But, if I'm doing minutes, I sometimes include stupid stuff, silly things, just to keep it a bit lighter, or I'll put some comment about the general tone of and that it's not minutes, it's not business-like, but I just think it's fun.
How to have fun with parliamentary procedure.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well, there's some things like elections, they're serious in a sense, but if you keep it light, you're more likely to get volunteers, because who wants to work with serious?
Right.
Yeah. One of my favorite comments during elections is, "Oh, I see a wiggly face over there. What did you want to run for? Somebody nominate them, would you?"
Oh. Yeah.
It's not wrong. It just gets the job done.
That's the thing. If people would just breathe and realize that Toastmasters is a place to practice all these skills that you might need in other places. So if you're afraid to practice them in front of Toastmasters, you're really doing yourself a disservice. The opportunity to be president and to hold business meetings and to try to use Robert's rules, it doesn't matter if you mess them up.
No.
Everyone's going to be happy that you were the one doing it and not them. That's reality.
Well, and this is everything in Toastmasters is about learning something. And this is a skill you can take with you to other organizations, even to business meetings at work. Because of my experience in Roberts and Toastmasters at work, when I worked in a big store, so 150 people at the store, and the new manager was making people crazy and sad and unhappy and cranky. And I talked to the HR person because I knew I had a voice and I knew what the problem was. It fixed the problem in 2 days. The whole store was happy. So it's powerful to learn, your power in managing things.
Good. Here's a question. Are you aware of any online tutorials or videos that show parliamentary procedure in action?
I'm not sure how much access you have, but if you look up National Association of Parliamentarians, NAP, they're creating more and more online things. So they have something, I don't know if it's on there yet, but called Rising Stars for people who are running these meetings in other places but don't want to be a parliamentarian for people in business. So I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I haven't looked yet. I just got that in my, I get a quarterly booklet from them. And
So that was National, I'm going to type that out, National Association.
Yeah. But I know they have materials, but I think the first would be to look at that book.
It's Rising Stars. Somebody even put the website. There you go.
No, I belong to the PABC, Parliamentarians Association of BC. And they have meetings. I went to them for quite a while. I haven't been able to. Quite often at the same time as a conference, so I haven't been to a lot for about 3 years, I think.
And they have meetings that move around. They're in different places. Are they always in Victoria, or do they come to Vancouver?
Yeah, the last one was in Victoria. They used to pretty much always be on the North Shore because that's where John Newman lived, and he was the president, and could get an expensive room there, I guess, at the North Shore Winter Club where he belonged.
Right.
But if you want information about that, I can send that too.
Okay. And you said it was Rising Stars that has some...
Yeah, I was just reading about it the other night, and I don't know if it's something that's done or something they're still creating. I wasn't quite sure I understood it. I need to go and look on their website, and they're doing more and more about online meetings and more about outreach to people and people who just want to know more about parliamentary procedure without joining the same way. Right. So there's different levels of parliamentarians. There's members, which you study and you answer questions in order to become a member. That's what I am. Then there's registered parliamentarians, and there's professional registered parliamentarians. And those people usually do a lot of work for other organizations and businesses. I've done a little bit for a couple other organizations, but not a lot.
Right. And just so everybody knows, a parliamentary procedure can be pretty exciting. There is a notorious Toastmasters International meeting in Malaysia where we had to recess the entire business meeting for a good 3/4 of an hour while somebody tried to get a hold of somebody to make a ruling, because there were so many parliamentarians in the audience, and the person who was chairing the meeting decided to just do away with a rule. It's close enough, and we're just going to not do another vote. And all these people started jumping up saying, point of order, and sharing their credentials. I had no idea that people were really into the whole parliamentary procedure thing, but it's a serious business.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I think it's really good to understand how it works, but I don't like when people learn a little bit and then want to hold a whole club hostage because they think they know something. So if you think you know it, look it up and make sure. I attended a club on Vancouver Island a few years ago, and this club was in a little bit of trouble, and they had a new executive that were really keen, and they wanted to do things, and some of the longer time members had said to them, well, no, we tried that, you can't do that. And then they had a parliamentarian who said, well, no, you can't do this because of that. And I was working on the island and visiting there, so I said, well, if you don't mind, can I say something about that? And they said, well, actually, it's like this, not like that. And they all went, oh, yeah, because it made sense, right? So then the business could move along, but it's not to hold people hostage. It's not to run things. It's supposed to make things fair. But if you know some of it, you'll know what's fair or not. And if you do have a Robert's Rules of Order actual book, the 11th edition, you can look things up. If there's a way you want to do something, generally there's a way to do it. You just got to figure it out. So you want to decide between 3 restaurants for your club to go to for dinner, you can have a vote on that with 3 options. So you just have to figure out how to do it. There's a way to do most stuff. Yeah.
Okay, kudos. Excellent examples, Joanne.
Yeah. So I hope that's helpful. I'm not sure how much that's going to help the business meeting, but at least you'll know maybe a bit of what's going on. And
I think the biggest thing is if you don't agree with a motion, if you can think of a better way that the motion can be handled, maybe some little change needs to be made. Some people are afraid. They sit on their hands and afraid to say something because they don't want to look stupid. We have this fear of humiliation. But Robert's Rules is there specifically so that you can be heard. And if there was no Robert's Rules, then you could be humiliated. But it never hurts to speak to the motion, and then through the speaking, make a suggestion that, I would like to amend the motion and put that amendment out there, and then have a discussion about the amendment. And then somebody thinks of a better way to amend that amendment. They want to amend the amendment. And it doesn't have to take very long because we can limit the discussion in the meeting. The important thing is that we get the right decisions made. And we can't get them made if you're sitting on your hands going, well, I don't really agree with this, but I don't want people to be mad at me.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a voice, use it. And if you don't know how to do something, ask.
Right. Okay. I see no other questions, and we are at 8:24. We do officially have 6 minutes left. Does anybody have an example or a what if that you want to throw out there?
Yeah.
Somebody want to make a motion and put that on the...
There's something you'd like to do in your club and you're wondering how to do it, or...
What a really quiet group.
Yeah.
They're all very polite. Either you just covered everything really well and they have full confidence in their ability of parliamentary procedure.
That's a lot of stuff. I hope you understood it. Hey, thank you, Anne.
What if no other attendee knows the rules? Does the chair explain them during the meeting? Yes. I think Toastmasters is a teaching place, so I really like when the chairman says, "Let's this." There is something about also motions that's quite important that a chair should do. So there's a motion made that we purchase a bus, and that it costs $30,000. So you repeat the motion back so everybody knows what you're talking about. And at that point, before the second happens, then the person who's making the motion has an opportunity to say yes and, or no but, and so you can get that motion correctly. Then if the chairman repeats it again, and once it's seconded, then you say, okay, if we decide on this, what we will be doing is we're buying a bus, and it seems redundant to rephrase it, but how many times are people just zoned out for a minute and don't hear it all, or they got, a bus, and then they shut down. And so if you repeat it, and then once the motion has passed, if it's amended or not amended, then the chairman should say, so in order to do this, we will need a committee to do the research on where we can get such a bus. So is there somebody who would like to be part of that committee? And maybe it would be first off the person who made the motion, and then maybe 4 or 5 other people decide on a number that you think would work, odd numbers generally. But if you repeat what's going to happen and how that's going to happen, that's really a very good next step. Because sometimes the decision gets made and then everybody goes away and goes, oh yeah, how are we going to do that? Yeah.
The way to make the action happen.
Right. David wrote, let me just go to David's question. Does the chair have to make a motion to approve the agenda before carrying on with the business meeting? No. No, you don't have to. It's maybe a good idea. It's good to get everybody, if you make the motion and everybody just formalizes it, then there's no doubt and everyone feels comfortable. I think it's a good idea. It just and it gets people kind of to feel like they're part of a process. I think it doesn't hurt.
If it's a big group like a district meeting, you better do that, because otherwise all sorts of things will come up and nothing will happen.
Right.
If it's in your club and you have a standing way of doing things, like you generally have officer reports and then you have new business, that's generally the way it goes. But if you have an important motion and really the way you're doing it isn't a rule, it's just our tradition. So our tradition is we have the reports first, but in this case I feel the motion is more important. So without objection, we'll deal with the motion first and then have reports.
Right. Margaret Humphreys has a funny question. Why are the members of Parliament allowed to yell, bang tabletops, and argue with each other while in session?
Because they're sitting too long and they're getting cranky. I don't know. They're stupid. It's rude.
Yeah, there's heckling.
Yeah. Well, then it's Bornos. Who knows what those people do?
Right.
I don't know. I guess I do some table banging or some here or something sometimes in a business meeting in a club just for fun. But why not? But it's I don't know. They're talking about making more rules about that. I don't know if they have yet in BC anyway.
Okay. Sujata, that's a message for all Webinar Wednesday attendees, actually. Are we going to be getting a survey about Wednesday webinars? There is actually a survey. If you are looking for a certain topic to be covered, you're here, thank you. You can put in, you can go to a Google form and fill it out of what topics you would like to hear in the future. So I do hope that you go back to that page and click on that form. If you would like to present a webinar or co-present a webinar on a specific topic, I would love for you to share that. And you'll be getting a phone call from me saying, hey, you said that you'd like to help do a Webinar Wednesday. Well, have I ever got the Wednesday for you? And with that, I would love to, feedback on the webinars. That is very good. And that is a great suggestion. And I will make a motion that we do feedback. We send out a form to gather feedback on these Webinar Wednesdays. Do I have a seconder? Oh, I got a seconder, Sujata. All those in favor, thumbs up. Okay, great. Tons of thumbs up. That's excellent. We've run out of time. Thank you so much, Joanne, for being on this Webinar Wednesday and for making us feel a little bit more comfortable about parliamentary procedure and realize that we can breathe, we can relax, we can make it fun for others, and we can have fun with parliamentary procedure.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was fun.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to end the webinar. And you will be getting the recording. Okay.